Robert, thanks for being here. You're an expert in ethics in business, and one of the themes of this campaign has been Mitt Romney's claiming the mantle of a successful businessman as a way of demonstrating his electability. How is that argument striking you, and how do you think it's playing out?
Well, I think it's going to be critical to the election because, as you say, that is the number one thing I think he's using to differentiate himself from Barack Obama. He's used it, I think, with fairly good effect during the primaries. But, you know, it's got its plus side and its minus side because it depends a lot on how the general populace is thinking about business at the moment. The only poll I've ever seen on the issue, 90% of the populace indicated that when somebody is a business person and running as a business person, they thought that their record as a business person would be critical to how they voted.
And a big piece of that really is how people view the ethical universe in which business people operate, right?
That's exactly right, and that's a potential problem for Romney because he worked for Bain, and of course Bain is a very aggressive company, and they buy companies and they strip them down and they sell them off, and sometimes they have great success and make the company much more efficient than it was before, and other times they leave them loaded with debt, and everybody who is at Bain does well and the other people don't, and so it's kind of a mixed bag in that industry. I think even people who study that industry would tell you that there are lots of success stories and lots of sort of horrible stories, and so whichever political side manages to tell that story better or make perhaps the more personalized commercial might profit.
How much ability do businesses have to affect those kinds of perceptions at the macro level?
Well, I think that's hard to know for sure, but clearly they spend a lot of money lobbying and on PR to try to affect those things. I think they have some impact. You think about the fact that when we have a scandal like Enron, right after that happens, everybody gets all worked up about business ethics, and so the Sarbanes-Oxley Act passes, and right after the subprime mess, everybody gets all worked up again about ethics in the mortgage industry, and Dodd-Frank passes. But as then time attenuates, business has a chance to get in and lobby and tell its side of the story and get Congress to back off, and so I do think they have an impact, and I think that as time passes between 2008, 2009, 2010, now we're up to 2012, I think that things are going to work better for Romney as a business person and a role model than they would have a few years ago.
Because really, absence a news story based on scandal or something going seriously wrong, issues of business ethics tend to not really move the needle with the public.
I think that's generally true. Although you think about the fact that, you know, we had the Jack Abramoff scandal about 6 years ago, and as that came down, a bunch of congressmen were running for re-election, and several of them were not reelected as you would have expected because of their ties to Abramoff, so it can be important. You know, I think about the fact that Newt Gingrich was running ads just a couple weeks ago down in Florida about the fact that Gingrich was running the ads about the fact that Romney had been on the board of directors of Damon Corporation back when he worked for Bain. They bought Damon during the time that Romney was on the board of directors. They had some Medicare fraud issues that later turned out to result in a fairly substantial fine. Seems like it was a $100 million fine that was paid, and Gingrich tried to make some hay with that, but there's no indication that Romney knew about the violations personally, and I don't think it had much impact. And then you look at Rick Scott, who is now the governor of Florida. During his election campaign, it was brought up that he was actually CEO of Columbia HCA at the time of perhaps the biggest Medicare fraud of all time, and they paid a fine of, it seems like it was $1.7 billion. That happened on his watch, and yet that did not keep him from being elected governor of Florida. That played a big part in the election. Now, it could have made the election much closer than it would have been otherwise, but it didn't prevent him from being elected.
It seems like the issue is that unless you're really just directly involved, particularly in this context, there's so many other big issues floating around, it's hard to make them really salient to voters.
I believe that's right. With unemployment and health care and the deficit, et cetera, it's hard to make that one of the top 5, 6, 7 issues people are going to be looking at.
It's, in some ways, it's more of an insider's game almost, it seems like.
I think that's possible. But at the same time, if you could make a direct tie, I think it would be all to the good.
Bob, thanks a lot for being here. Much appreciated.
My pleasure.